So just a short one today. Thought I'd tell another unusual tale, something you might know have heard before, and that's the story of half-hung Archie and how a rather unusual elixir brought him back to life. So our story takes place around Loch Fyne, which is on the west coast. It's near Loch Lomond in the Trossachs National Park. Archie himself, he was from a wee village called Drip, which no longer exists sadly, and that's a real shame. It would have been my second favourite four-letter Scottish town name beginning with D, right after Dull near Aberfeldy. Now Archie Macphunn, he wasn't the most reputable fella. He was a cow and a sheep thief, and one day he was caught stealing from Clan Campbell, and that wasn't a group that you wanted to mess with back in the 1600s. The Campbell clan, they were powerful back then. They're believed to be related to Robert the Bruce, and they fought alongside him at the Scottish Wars of Independence, including the Battle of Bannockburn in the early 1300s. And for their efforts, they were handsomely compensated with land in the Loch Fyne area that used to belong to Bruce's enemies. This granted the Campbells quite a lot of status. They held positions in both the Scottish and UK government, so when Archie was caught stealing from them, there was only going to be one suitable punishment: death. Archie was sentenced to be hung from a tree just outside Inverary on the west side of Loch Fyne, and after a few minutes dancing the hangman's jig, as they would say back then, he was pronounced dead. Archie's wife, who was a wet nurse, that's someone who breastfeeds other people's children. It was the past, you know, times were hard, you had to make a living somehow. She heard Archie's death, she was obviously distraught, so she rowed across Loch Fyne to collect the body and bring it back to be buried. However, as she was rowing back across the loch, she saw a few twitches in Archie's body, and using all of her wet nurse knowledge, she mixed her own breast milk with a bottle of whisky that just so happened to be on the boat. She brought it up to his lips and she fed it to him. By the time they'd made it to dry land, Archie was alive and kicking. He had survived the hanging, and that earned him the nickname Half-Hung Archie in the local area. So at the time in Scotland, and until quite recently actually, you couldn't be tried for the same crime more than once. And because Archie had already been tried, sentenced and punished, he was now a free man in the eyes of the law. Obviously at this point, Archie's been dead nearly 400 years, but his story lives on, so every now and again his descendants will bottle single cask whiskies under the Macphunn name. I think there have been 5 editions to date. Incredibly limited release. If you want one, you have to act fast, but it could be worth it. This could be a dram that might save your life one day. If you enjoyed the video, do give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and have a good one.